Hey, what's going on, guys? So we're back for some notes today. Today we're going to be looking at converting fractions to decimals and decimals to percents and percents to decimals and all that good stuff. All right. So before we start, the first thing you want to do, and you may already know this, okay? So if it's review, that's great. All right. Hopefully, it reminds you from last year. Let's look at what a percent is. What do we know about a percent? Okay. So we know a percent. This is a number out of 100. Okay, it's a number out of 100. All right, so for example, if I have 3%, that would just mean that that is 3 out of 100. And notice this looks like a fraction. Okay, so keep that in mind. So percent is a number out of 100. All right, so for example, 3% would mean that if 3% of the population likes chocolate milk, that means that they asked 100 people and only 3 of them liked it, okay, if out of 100. Okay, so first thing, we're going to look at converting fractions to decimals. All right, fractions to decimals. So before we start, all right, let's say if I have 3/4. All right, look at the fraction 3/4. And I want you to think about operation symbols. When I say operations, I mean plus, minus, multiply, divide. What operation symbol does this look like? Okay, this can look like a division sign. Okay, because all I'm doing is replacing the 3 with this dot and the 4 with that dot. So a fraction can look kind of like a division sign. So when we see a fraction, we should think division. All right. So when we change a fraction to a decimal, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to divide the top number. The top number is called the numerator by the bottom number, which is the denominator. Denominator. Okay, so when we read this, we're going to read it top to bottom, and it's going to be 3 divided by 4. Okay, or 3 divided by 4. And if you put that in your calculator, you will get 0.75. Okay, so all you do is you do the top number divided by the bottom number. Okay, so if I read this from top to bottom, all right, this would be 3 divided by 4. Okay, so let's try an example. Let's say if we're going to change, what would be an easy one? Let's do 7/8. Okay, we're going to convert 7/8 to a decimal. So by doing that, I'm going to have to do 7 divided by 8. And when you divide 7 divided by 8, you get 0.875. Okay, so that's the decimal of 7/8. Okay, so fractions of decimals, all we're doing is dividing. Top number divided by the bottom number. Okay, now let's look at decimals to percents. Okay, we're going to convert decimals to percents. So the first thing we need to think of with decimals to percents, we go back up here to our main definition. Remember, a percent is a number out of 100. Okay, so think about that percent and our fraction, and think about our fraction and our decimal. Okay, we're going to change decimals to percents. So when we convert a decimal to a percent, all right, all we're going to do is we're going to multiply by 100. Okay, so you will multiply the decimal by 100. All right, in our example, okay, let's say we're going to change 0.64, and we want to change this to a percent. Now you can multiply by 100, okay, and when you multiply by 100, all right, all that does is that moves my decimal 2 places to the right. So you multiply by 100, that basically means move decimal 2 places right, and that is this direction. Okay, that's all we're doing. So we would do 0.64 and change that to a percent. You would do 0.64 times 100, which will give you 64%. Or you can just go 1, 2, there's my new decimal, 64%. Okay, let's look at another one. What if we had 0.07? Again, you multiply by 100, so if you have your calculator handy, you can just go 0.07 times 100, and that's going to give you 7%. Or you can think of just move your decimal 2 places right. We can go 1, 2. The decimal will be behind my 7, which will just leave me a 7%. Now let's look at another one that's kind of tricky that gets a lot of people. Let's say if I have 0.5. All right, so we can either do 0.5 times 100. If you put that in your calculator, that will give you 50%. But if you're one of those people to move it 2 places, I get this all the time. They move it and it's, well, Mr. Reed, there's nothing here to move it again. You add a placeholder, okay? If you're going to the right of the decimal, you can always add zeros to the right of a decimal, okay? So I'm going to add a 0 here as my placeholder. Move it 1 more spot, move your decimal there, and again, it'll give you 50%, okay? Now, our last one, we're going to look at percents back to decimals. Make sure we can see this here. So we're going to go percents to decimal. All right, now it's basically the same here, only it's the opposite. So instead of multiplying, what's the opposite of multiply? You're going to divide by 100, okay? Or you can think move decimal 2 places. Now up here we went right, down here we're going to go left. Okay, that's that direction. All right, so we'll do an example here. So let's say 32%. We want to convert that to a decimal. Okay, if I move it 2 places left, the decimal is on the outside. It's between your last number and your percent. We'll go 1, 2, and that's going to give me 0.32. Okay, or you can divide by 100. All right, and remember, divide by 100, 32%. When I go back over to my main notes, remember I took that number that was in front of the percent and put it over 100? That would be 32 over 100. Okay, and then that, how you change this up here, will give you 0.32. Okay, we're going to move our examples up here. So we're kind of running out of room. So let's make this a little section here. We'll have example 2. Okay. Let's look at a percent that has a decimal already included in it. So let's say we have 27.1%, and we're going to convert that to a decimal. Now some of you say, well, Mr. Reed, it's already a decimal. It is, but it has a percent sign after it, which means it is a percent. So I can take this number, 27.1%, and we can divide by 100, okay, and that will give us 0.271. Or we can go back here, move our decimal to the left, 1, 2, and that will give me 0.271. Okay? Or you can do like you did down here, 27.1 over 100, and then divide that. And that will also give you 0.271. Okay? And the last one here. What if we have a percent that was larger than 100? For example, if I had 150%. All right, this one gets a lot of people. When a lot of students look at this and they say, well, this is going to be 0.150. No. Okay, we're moving our decimal 2 places. Okay, so again, I can take this number, 150% divided by 100. That will give me 1.5. If I move my decimal 2 places, remember your decimal will be here unless it's already in the percent. We will go 1, 2. It's going to be right here between the 1 and the 5. And that will just give me 1.5. All right. Hopefully these help. Again, if you guys need to contact me through email, Google Classroom. All right. And hopefully this helps and helps you with all your work. Thanks, guys.